indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, if you would do roll call, please.
Councilmember Zerfing?
She's absent. She got stung by a bee and is having a reaction, so she's not going to be able to make it.
Councilmember Cramlett?
I haven't heard anything.
Councilmember Benson?
Here.
Councilmember Masters?
Yes.
Councilmember Pruitt?
Yes.
Councilmember Haight?
Here.
And Mayor Fisher?
Here. Okay, at this time, amendments to the agenda. There will be one addition to new business under, it will be line item F. It will be discussion of tourism committee, and that will be added under new business.
And Mayor, you have a staff report on that with a recommendation from us. And then I have some additions to the initial set of work plan items that we hammered out last week that I want to add when you get to my contract and the work plan. There are two additional pieces. One of them is critical, the economic development piece. So when you act on the contract, I'd like to have you adopt that one also.
So add work plan and economic development plan under line item A under new business.
Right, it's already on 9B. There would just
Oh,
be
is it?
some additions to it that you haven't seen.
Oh, okay. Additions to. All right. At this time, there is no public hearing. There is no presentations this evening. At this time, comments by the general public. Any item of interest that is not going to be discussed on the agenda tonight, committee reports and government officials. You are directed, when you take the podium, to first identify yourself to the council. At all times, you will address the council as a whole. You will do it respectfully, and you will be allowed 5 minutes per person. At this time, is there anyone who wishes to address the council? Pat?
Hello, I'm Pat Heskar. Tonight I'm here representing the Columbia Gorge Lions. First of all, if I could just share these with you. We've got new brochures we're proud of that tell everyone what we do. I'd like to share them with the public too. Thank you. Since we didn't have a locks tender, and I had already written my article for it, I decided to bring it to council, and hopefully there's enough of the public listening that they'll hear it too. I'm going to start with the month of April. Richard Miller was inducted as a new member into the Columbia Gorge Lions. $3,000 was donated to the Port of Cascade Locks for 3 new tents to show our appreciation for all they do for Stern Wheeler Days. $500 was donated to Mercy Corps for relief to Japan after their earthquakes. We helped during the Lions Follies and donated tickets to the Follies totaling $96 to Cascade Locks senior citizens. The fire and ambulance departments invited us and other citizens to a potluck at the station. Very informative to learn how the equipment is used. 3 Lions from our club attended the 36G Lions Convention in Hood River, where $500 was donated to diabetes and $500 was donated to the Sight and Hearing Foundation. $100 was also donated to Canine Companions in April. We donated $100 worth of prizes with some Lions time for bingo during family night at the school while other members worked bingo at City Hall. District Governor Jason visited our club and showed some very interesting videos. $500 was donated to Mercy Corps for relief in the southeastern U.S. after tornadoes. Sean Jackson, a former student of Cascade Locks High School, presently in his second year at Mount Hood Community College, towards becoming an emergency room doctor, was awarded our $500 scholarship again, because we gave him $500 last year too, towards his second year. For some unknown reason, no student citizen of Cascade Locks attending Hood River Valley High School applied for our scholarship. Let's not forget Sternwheeler Days. We spend about 6 months planning, getting donations and sponsors. Sternwheeler Days and bingo are how we make the money to make all these donations. We are so grateful to those people and businesses that help us. Jess Groves arranged for about 100 bikers to ride from Crown Point to Bonneville and then to the park during Sternwheeler Days. Our club, like many other nonprofit clubs, reported income and expenses to the IRS. We were not aware of this requirement, but everything's fine. We do not make enough money and donate most of what we have. In July, we didn't have a meeting in July. Too much going on and people on vacation, but we did donate $500 towards fireworks for the 4th of July. Fireworks. August, our big project for the month was the Old Timers Picnic, held the day before Labor Day. We sell raffle tickets for the prizes that are donated by businesses and our club. Our club doesn't make any money from the sales. Besides the games for children and adults, we have money awards for the oldest man, the oldest woman, the youngest child, person who traveled the furthest, and the largest family. The Stubbs family beat out my family, the Irvings, this year. I guess they're just more prolific. We are proud to say we have spent $7,296 since April in the community and worldwide with money we make from bingo, Sternwheeler Days, and newspaper sales. We have hospital equipment to loan to citizens. The equipment was donated to our club for this purpose. What we have: hospital beds, walkers, quad canes, potty chairs, bathtub hoist, toilet seat booster, wheelchairs, and crutches. If you know somebody in need, have them call me, 374-8136. Thank you, and remember, the Lions serve.
Thank you.
Tina Tarapi, Cascade Locks. I'd like to read some comments, some quotes from various professionals regarding possible violations of a local business here in town. This is a quote from Rich Carson. Mayor George Fisher and City Councilor Kevin Benson did install 2 cabins illegally in the KOA campground. As city officials, they should have known the laws and complied with them. The Hood River County building official advised me of this problem and I sought legal counsel. Legal counsel told me it was illegal and that Kevin Benson needed both county building permits and city land use permits. I gave this memo both to the mayor and the councilor and they did nothing. He goes on to say, I got an opinion from Larry Epstein that Kevin needed a conditional use permit and site plan review. I gave Kevin a copy of this opinion and you can get a copy from Kathy Woosley. Please note that Rich Carson and Larry Epstein were both hired by this current council. From the fire chief's lawyer to city council in a recent letter. The poor treatment of Mr. Pritchard intensified after he brought up to city leaders and employees the fact that the mayor and another councilor could not legally add structures to a KOA campground without the appropriate permits. As a result of that complaint, Mr. Pritchard was retaliated against, had his pay reduced, and was forced to resign. And let me just clarify that. Jeff Pritchard had this authority as fire marshal, and this was confirmed by the state fire marshal, Ted Mergert, when I contacted him. From Mark Van Vost, a cease and desist order from the county, investigation notice dated 5/24/2011, stating no permits issued by city or county. No electrical or plumbing permits had been issued, although plumbing connections have occurred without inspection or approvals. No land use has been issued. An email to me from Mark Van Vost. August 29th. At the present time, no permit has been issued, only applied for. To clarify, Mr. Benson never permitted the buildings as storage buildings. These particular buildings had been permitted as accessory storage structures for another owner at another site, not all related to Mr. Benson or the KOA. It is my understanding that Mr. Benson purchased these buildings from the previous owner and moved them to the site in Cascade Locks. Permits within the state of Oregon are typically site-specific with very few exceptions. That said, if a building or structure is moved from one site to another, it must have a new permit from the building department. The same is true for a change of use. If something was permitted as a storage building and changes to lodging, even without ever being moved, it requires permits. Permits cannot be issued until he addresses the plan deficiencies and provides the building department with additional information. Regarding the temporary land use permit that was issued July 7th by Rich Carson on his last day here at the city, this is an email from Mark Van Vost addressing that temporary land use permit. The temporary use provisions allow activities and services. They do not clearly allow structures. There is nothing temporary about the cabins. They are structures. If the city has issued any temporary permits for the cabins, I recommend the city revoke those permits and undertake enforcement to ensure that the owner promptly removes the structures in question. That was an email to Sue. Here's another one to Sue. If Rich issued a temporary permit for 2 cabins, despite my advice in my June 2nd email to him, I recommend the city revoke it and enforce the code. Then let me bring attention to our own city resolution 1120, which is a fee schedule for various land use and development permit applications. It specifically states, a temporary permit will not be allowed until a building permit is purchased through Hood River County. That didn't happen. So basically the city issued temporary land use permit issued to KOA is really illegal and invalid. Possible fees evaded. Conditional use, $625. Site plan, $625. Sewer can be anywhere from $983 to $10,000 per cabin, dependent on pipe size. Water, $1,700 to $105,000 per cabin, dependent on pipe size. So minimum of $4,000 to $5,000 per cabin, up to thousands of dollars per cabin of fees not paid to the city. I wonder myself, is this why majority of council does not have planning commission meet to avoid having this discovered? Laws and city policy have been broken and possible ethics violations by an existing city councilor and mayor. If council or any council member turns away from this after it has been brought to their attention publicly, then they also could be guilty of these violations. There is obvious evasion here in the history of these events.
Would anyone else from the public care to speak?
My name is Arnie Kanonen. I'm a citizen here in Cascade Locks. My question is, since there's no ordinance enforcement officer, how does the city enforce any of its ordinances? And the specific example that Tina mentioned is exactly the one I'm looking at. Here's a blatant violation and nothing has been done. There's no mechanism except through city council to take care of it. I would like to know when you're going to start taking care of your job. And if you're not, let's find some way that we can do it, because at the moment nothing is happening.
Anyone else from the public care to speak?
Brad Lorang. Cascade Locks City Council, as the people we elected to represent us, have an important responsibility. A large part of that responsibility is how they interact with people. It is relational. We are not an island unto ourselves. The city relies heavily on partnerships with other government agencies and entities, as well as organizations, for us to function effectively and efficiently as a city. This council has severed ties and damaged relationships with a number of these agencies and organizations, like the West Columbia River Gorge Chamber and the West Columbia River Gorge Business Consortium. and the Hood River County Fire Defense Board, to name a few. The press release on the city's website regarding mutual aid was abusive and rude. It was an embarrassment and a humiliation to the city. The demeanor of the letter dated August 16th to the volunteers was similarly abrasive and without tact. This council's apparent lack of regard for its relationships with citizens, with the city staff, employees, and volunteers has had devastating effects on the city's services, finances, and infrastructure. It's directly responsible for the loss of at least 7 staff members and 14 volunteers, resulting in the loss of our mutual aid agreement. Our previous interim city administrator said the City Hall was an extremely hostile work environment. The hostile treatment of employees has also resulted in a lawsuit, and I have the paper here from Jeff Pritchard's lawyer, Lafkey and Lafkey, for monetary damages for continued hostile treatment and continued libelous statements made by a number of members of the City Council. The overall inconsiderate treatment of the city's employees and citizens and other vital partnerships has been extremely damaging to our city and needs to come to a stop. Thank you.
Would anyone else?
Craig Martin, Cascade Locks. On August 15th, the mayor was tasked by the council to investigate a vote of no confidence. The city attorney said she would make every effort along with the mayor to meet the deadline. What happened with that? Only one phone call was made. It was made to Lieutenant Parrish in regards to it. He suggested that a neutral third party that understood the fire language would do the investigation. What happened with that? I've never received a phone call. None of the volunteers ever received any phone calls on that investigation. The mayor has also said that he has sent letters to the volunteers about making Jess Zerfing the fire chief. Where are those letters? I've never got one. None of the volunteers have gotten one. Nothing was put on the required reading board at the fire station. None of those letters were put in our mailboxes at the fire station. So where are those letters? Who were they addressed to? And what did the letter say? Also, I've been noticing that that there's been some new people in the fire department. Apparently, they've been issued gear and equipment, line gear, structural gear, have not received any form of training, have not gone through a background check, drug check. The applications haven't been processed yet through council, since you have ultimate authority on those decisions. If that hasn't happened, why are these individuals getting issued gear worth thousands of dollars? If it is your intent to get these individuals certified and not bring back the existing volunteers, you're looking at a minimum of 6 months before that fire department is fully functional. You're looking at 150 hours of just level 1 firefighting training. Now that takes about 6 months. Now you can accelerate those 6 months if it's available, but you still have to meet the 150-hour requirement by DPSST. That's just for them to put water on a fire. Then you got apparatus training that they have to do. They got a cone course they have to do. They got EVOC courses that they have to do through NFPA required courses. So by the time they're all done, they have to do roughly 250 hours of training before they can even take an engine, drive an apparatus out of the bay doors to go fight fires. So you're looking 6 months before you have a functional fire department. What do you guys plan on doing in the meantime if something does happen? Thank you.
Randy Mislick, Cascade Locks. So I guess the alternative is to go back to doing whatever the old fire department wants us to do. That's what they've always wanted. And that's what they've told you. If you don't get this, when was it, last February when they had that banquet at Multnomah Falls? They said, if anything happens to our fire chief, we're going to all get up and go on strike. Well, I wish they had done it then, instead of doing it now when we're right in the middle of the fire season. But I look at those 14 and those other volunteers that they keep on talking about as people who mutinied against us, who abandoned us, rather than helping us in our hour of need. And to me, it is entirely appropriate to at least for those 3 captains that pretty much didn't go along with your program there, get rid of them. Do away with them. And then let the others, give them a choice. If you want to come back, come back. If not, fine, we'll start over. And that's how I feel. I feel safer now, much safer, knowing that what we have going on here now than what we had before. Simply because what we had going on before was a tainted political organization that was strong and paramilitary, but they followed their commander, not us, not the citizens who made it all possible for them. So that's all I'm going to say on EMS. I wasn't even going to speak about them tonight. But I'm happy you're on board, and I hope it continues, and I'm happy with the general administrator. I'm so happy, very happy with all this. It's very unusual. And it's the first time in the 21 years that I've lived here that I've seen something like that, and I hope it continues. And for the legal counsel, in my opinion, you're getting strong, good legal counsel now. And whereas before, we had Landy from Lake Oswego who kept on telling the city council, oh yes, you can raise rates. The city council can raise electrical rates. It's up to you, despite the initiatives. And that's not true. And it never has been true. But it would have been a battle with that last group. And that's all they did. That last council, all they did was spend and spend and spend and spend. They didn't bother even paying back. They had no iota of paying back any debt whatsoever. And I believe, personally, their game plan was to spend the governmental gas tank dry until the citizens had no choice. So if it came to a vote, what choice would the citizens have, right? The main reason those initiatives came on board was that the citizens were afraid of the government and what they were capable of doing to them in terms of creating debt. And that was the main thing. When we went out there getting people to sign that petitions for the initiatives, it was specifically because the council at that time was thinking about adding on a $30 a month service charge to our monthly bills to help pay off the firehouse that they wouldn't allow us to vote on. Wonderful. Isn't that wonderful? Wouldn't allow us to vote on it, and yet they wanted to tax us on it. And so, and the general administrator, the ex-one, the one that left last December with 18 grand of our hard-earned tax money for resigning, he was the one that told the city council, as smart as he was, as educated as he was the one that told the city council, yeah, you can institute this service charge, and there's not a thing the citizens can do about it. Voila, the initiatives. That's how smart he was. And so they came on board, and the citizens, 54% of the citizens voted for it as opposed to the 46% who did vote for it. And look how they cheated in that election. The general administrator threw his 2 cents in on the Locks tender when he clearly should not have. Whenever initiatives or resolutions come on board, the city council, the government is to retain a neutral stance. He did not. And he was caught at it 2 years later by the state. That's all I have to say. I'm happy with this government. I feel safe with you, and I hope that you stay. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Sandra Kelly from Cascade Locks. When I hear the ex-mayor standing up here telling this government how irresponsible they've been, it's hard to believe, because there has never been a government as irresponsible as the last. And they also stand here and tell you you have dismantled the fire department. I'm standing here telling you you haven't. They have. It was methodical, it was on purpose, and it was planned from the day you got elected, and they didn't. I think that that's wrong, and I think it's obvious, and I think people should tune in and see what's happening here. When the ex-mayor goes around bragging before the city administrator quits and blindsides 2/3 or 3 of the 7 council members. When he goes around bragging the night before that stay tuned for the last 5 minutes of the meeting, well, I'm going to do something. There's going to be something that happens that fixes this next council. So this council has had to mull through no staff reports, no guidance, legal counsel that was tainted against them, and nonetheless, you're sitting here, you have come up with good legal counsel, a wonderful new interim city administrator that is approaching things in a methodical and organized way, a good communicator, something I think this council needs, and probably your weakest point. I don't think you're perfect, but I think you're great compared to what we had, and I think you're great compared to what we're going to get if you're not here. Thank you.
Gary Munkoff, Cascade Locks. I have a question. Are you going to talk about any of these in depth, your priorities? Because I had some concerns on issues with the fire department and budget things, audit. So should I bring them up now, or should I wait till you get into those? Are you going to go into those in detail tonight?
Paul?
What will happen tonight is, as negotiated in my contract, there will be elements of the work plan and evaluation. The priorities that were established by council last week here are added to my work plan. So the number one priority for me to work on is the fire issue. So there are others, there are only 4 pieces Gary done at this time. So as I mentioned last week, those will come rolling in as I get them completed.
Okay.
So if you have specific comments, I'm sure the council will be willing to listen to them.
Now?
Sure.
Sure, okay. If I can find them here. Well, first I want to thank Don Haight for bringing forth quite a bit of interesting information over the past few months. And after reading some of that information, especially on the fire department vehicle maintenance, in specifically the command vehicle having 3 new engines over a short period of time, and then you couple that with the statements from the volunteers that they did not respond to emergency calls after Chief Pritchard resigned because they were concerned for their safety using vehicles that have maintenance issues. So obviously our fire chief, Mr. Pritchard, considered vehicle maintenance a very low priority. And so my concern is, when you get into these issues, I'm hoping that you will set some priorities for maintenance vehicle maintenance, maybe log books, I don't know, but to have one vehicle have 3 engines is just absurd. It's absurd. Somebody isn't checking oil. Somebody isn't taking care of the vehicles. The other concern I have is that the organizational chaos that followed when Chief Pritchard resigned. Now here you've got an emergency services organization that goes into complete free fall because one person leaves the organization. So how many years and how many thousands of dollars were spent on training these people, and nobody ever thought to train them how to maintain their organization in the event that somebody drops out of the organization? So I would hope that when you get to discussing this, that's a concern of yours too. I mean, no organization should fall apart because one person leaves. That should have been the first priority, to make sure that everybody knew what their place was in any circumstance. That was it. And then I would hope that you would set some kind of oversight policy. Mr. Seeger obviously never bothered to check into any of these things. He never checked what the fire department was doing. He never checked into what the training programs were. He never checked into what the maintenance programs were. So we ended up with none at all. And then his puppet counsel followed him and never looked into it either. So there was no oversight by the city administrator or by the city council. And I would hope that you folks would remedy that. No business runs without oversight. And then the other question I have, is the fire department an enterprise fund? Does anybody know? It's not? Okay, okay. And then my other concern is budget and fiscal. For the first time ever since I've been here, you looked at the budget on a line item basis, and you uncovered a lot of questionable practices, questionable expenditures of funds running in the red. I would hope you would maintain that and continue with that. And I want to thank the Budget Committee for having the foresight and the gumption to do it that way instead of, as in the past, well, let's see if we can do it in 2 sessions. Get it passed, bam. So anyway, I want to thank you guys for changing the course here, and I hope that you'll listen to my concerns when you get into the details of your priorities. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public here to speak?
Good evening, Rob Rostoff, City of Cascade Locks. One of the things you guys talked about when you first took office was budgetary process and not overspending your budget and whatnot. As I recall, back in January, you had approximately 6 months worth of attorney fees left for the rest of the fiscal year, and they disappeared like ice in a desert. You got a new attorney with the beginning of the new fiscal year. I think the rate was about $1,200 a month. August billing, $3,600 times 3. Why does it seem to me that that's not good fiscal policy? Now let's move on. I have a letter here dated March 21, 2011, addressed to Mayor Fisher, and in it, it talks about the second report that was done by Onstott Brule and Cyphers, the auditor's report. And it says the charts are presented on the budget basis, which will differ somewhat from the full accrual basis under generally accepted accounting principles, which is GAAP. In other words, they were essentially books that were deliberately skewed. They were ordered that way. Here's the billing form. Right there. It says on here, Rich, that was the predecessor, our previous city administrator. This was not budgeted for. The mayor had our auditor do this analysis without knowing how much and where the expenses are to be charged. We're $650 for this little item that was authorized by our mayor. Here's a check, or a copy of the check from the city to pay for this that was used in the budgetary process that essentially was used to discredit the fire chief, causing him to leave, and leading to the destruction of our fire department. This was known to be happening here long before you guys sat down. Some of you were overheard saying you were going to get this guy. And that's referenced here in the letter from Lafke and Lafke. We're soon apparently going to have a lawsuit against the city and against some of the councilors apparently because of what's occurred. So some more unnecessary added expenses because of incredible HR policies here in the city. I watched a bunch of you sit here for 45 minutes and just chew on that guy, demean him, and humiliate them for 45 minutes in public. Yeah. That was one time. Another time I saw it happen for 25 minutes. And it says, in spite of that good performance, the city cut Mr. Pritchard's pay and forced him to resign on July 11, 2011, during city council meetings, including but not limited to February 7 and June 13, 2011. Leading up to Mr. Pritchard's resignation, the council discussed sensitive employee personnel matters in public session, contrary to Oregon law and past practice. In those public council meetings, councilors wrongfully accused Mr. Pritchard of malfeasance and misappropriation of funds. The poor treatment of Mr. Pritchard intensified after he brought up to city leaders and employees the fact that the mayor and other city councilor could not legally add structures to a KOA campground without the appropriate permits. As a result of that complaint, Mr. Pritchard was retaliated against, had his pay reduced, and was forced to resign. Thanks. Kathy, I'd appreciate listening to the record. I'd like to have those originals back if I might.
Is there anyone else from the public care to speak? No? At this time, we will move on to discussion, declaration, and potential conflicts of interest. Seeing none, we will go on to consent agenda. Consent agenda may be approved in its entirety in a single motion. Items are considered to be routine. Any counselor may make a motion to remove any items from the consent agenda on an individual discussion. First, item A, approval of the minutes of the August 15th, 2011 special council meeting. Item B, approval of the minutes of the August 22nd, 2011 council meeting. Item C, approval of minutes of the September 7th, 2011 workshop session. Ratification of bills in the amount of $142,945.62. Is there any discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second it.
It's been moved by Tiffany Pruitt and seconded by Don Haight to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next, we will move on to unfinished business. We have none, so we will move into new business. Item A, approval of the contract with Paul Cook for the interim city administrator. Okay. At this time, I want to make a brief statement. The council at the previous meeting had gave me the authority to negotiate a contract with Paul Cook for the interim city administrator position. So after being approved by the council to do that, I went ahead and negotiated a contract with Mr. Cook, and we came to an agreement. The contract was given to all the council members at the work session that we had last, so everybody could review that. And that's basically what I wanted to say for that. And then, Paul, you wanted us to talk about the work plan.
Right. Honorable Mayor, members of council, there are a number of attachments. I tried to make this somewhat simplified, so I've tied all of these together because they relate to the proposed contract. So I think what you want to do first is approve the contract, and then we'll go to the various pieces. At least that's the way we set up the agenda, unless the city attorney has a separate approach. I would point out, Mayor and Council, that the contract is for a period of 12 months, and it will pay me $5,000 $5,000 early cancellation of the contract. So that is a normal practice in this business. You want to have some penalty to make people slow down and say, gee, do we really want to do this? So this is not a 6-month severance, it's just a $5,000 severance amount. So at this point, we're seeking council approval of the contract as submitted. I believe the attorney has drafted this so that it does meet the requirements of state law.
I'll make a motion that we,
Oh, would anyone from the public wish to comment? Seeing none, we'll go on to council. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we accept the contract as it's prepared and as it's been reviewed.
I'll second it.
It's been moved by Don Haight and seconded by Tiffany Pruitt to approve the contract as it's been prepared. At this time, I don't know if there's discussion or not, but go ahead. Lance?
Are you calling for discussion now?
Well, I don't know if I have to, because it's already been, the council already gave me the authority to negotiate the contract, so I think we just approve it or we don't.
So why is it on the agenda if it's already?
Pardon me?
I think it would
Do we-
still be appropriate to
Is
have
it just,
discussion.
okay, then we
under the
ask for
motion.
discussion.
Okay.
So go ahead, Lance, if you have a question.
I would just like to call your attention to page 2, section 5, compensation, which Mr. Cook referenced earlier. And it calls for $5,000 for the work and then $1,100 per month for lodging. Or it says not to exceed $1,100 per month for lodging. And then there's another sentence there that says that the contractor is going to arrange with city finance for the city to pay the contractor's lodging expenses directly. And I personally don't feel that's appropriate. I see other solutions being Mr. Cook gets reimbursed, or that Mr. Cook receives the monthly allowance. But for the city, I think there's just an appearance there, if the city is paying a landlord directly, there's an appearance of, perhaps favoritism, or the city paying something directly to a business or a landlord, I don't feel is appropriate. I don't have a problem with Mr. Cook being here, I don't have a problem with those, the first 2 sentences of that section, but paying directly to the landlord, I think, is inappropriate.
Okay.
If nothing else, than the experience, the perception that it creates.
Kevin?
I would like to point out that Mr. Cook has the right to have any landlord that he wishes. And there's nothing in this contract that directs the city to pay any specific landlord or any specific person other than they're to pay where he's staying. So there's nothing in this contract that would give anyone any favoritism.
And Mayor, if I might, just to comment on it, and I've done this quite a bit over the last 15 years, and each situation is different. And so it's usually, what do you negotiate, and this is what we've negotiated, and that's fine with me.
Lance?
Yeah, and I agree with what Kevin said, other than the fact that the city will be writing a check directly to some sort of landlord or business. Regardless of who chooses, the city will be doing that. And to me, it just creates the perception that the city is favoring one person over another. I prefer that tax dollars go to a person for their services rather than directly to a landlord. So that's just, that's my objection to that particular section.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion.
Yeah.
Motion for the vote.
That was
Oh,
discussion.
the motion's already begun. The call for vote then. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed?
Motion passes.
So Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, the next item on the agenda relates to the priorities in the work plan, and that was the work that we did last week here. So I've attached, this is attachment B, which is the initial set of City Council priorities, along with the initial work plan items that you had identified as your highest priorities, which included the fire department issue and the financial reports. I sent you over the weekend, and you have at the dais the second list of initial work plan items. Although my original plan was to get all of them done at one time, gee, I seem to have run out of time. This weekend I didn't get them all done. So as we had talked last week when you developed these will come to you over the next couple meetings to be adopted. So priority number 3, if you'll remember, I told you I tried to group some of these together so that they kind of relate in topical areas. So economic development is priority number 3, and priority 4 is the comprehensive water system master plan. 5 is the wastewater treatment operation, and that's as far as I got. So what I'm asking you to approve tonight are the initial set of priorities that you set, and that's attachment B, and the work plan items, both in the initial document as well as the second list that I distributed for tonight's meeting. I would be glad to answer any questions you may have on any of these. So I'm open for discussion.
It's open to the floor. Does anyone from the floor have a question they'd like to ask in regards to the work plan?
Those 5 priorities that you just mentioned, is that what you're talking about as the work plan?
Or 17.
That's the initial. There's about 7,320 things that the council identified that we need to do. There were about 30 initial priorities that they worked on.
I do have one comment then.
And so I'm in the process of converting those to the work plan format so that they have some evaluation criteria. Not that they couldn't add other things to the evaluation criteria, but this is a place for us to start and move forward.
Sandra Kelly, I just have one comment on that, and that's the necessity. And I know the council mentioned that that was being done now, but I think it should play a role in your goals to look into our water rights and make sure that we are treating them in the way we need to in order to retain them. This has been an ongoing issue since I was on the council in the year 2000. And I thought at that time we hired a water rights attorney to do that, and the ball seems to have been dropped. And I think it was dropped for a while at least, and I think it's been picked back up, and I'm glad about that. But I just wanted to emphasize how important that is to this city. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the public here to speak? Seeing none, we'll go to council.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
just one other comment. You also have in front of you a proposed draft job description for a joint city port economic development task force. So included in my recommendations about work plan is this job description and a recommendation to you that the mayor, the council president, and one other council person, whoever you want to select, be the city's side of the joint economic development task force. This group will meet tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock to get started on the work that will be directed through this work plan.
In that work plan, I would like to nominate Kevin Benson as the third person in that committee. So,
Who are the other 2?
you and myself. So, is there there any comments by the council? Questions?
We need a motion, I think, right, for,
Need a motion
proceed.
to adopt?
Well, there's been a nomination, there could be a second, and then you can call for a vote that way.
Oh,
Well, it seems like we have several items that we're discussing kind of concurrently.
I thought that was just to do with the committee, excuse me.
Then, I'm just trying to clarify, Mr. Cook. Mr. Cook?
Yes.
We're talking about the part of the work plan and
Yes.
and then the economic development
Correct.
thing as well.
I think the best way to look at it in terms of the contract would be to consider the initial set of council priorities, the initial work plan, both of which say attachment B at the top, the second list, which will then say attachment B at the top, and then the job description for the Economic Development Task Force, which would then also say attachment B at the top, as attachment B to be
Okay.
considered together to approve or not.
So Councilman, this is, if you look at the recommendation portion of the staff report, because there are 5 pieces here, and I'm sorry, it gets kind of convoluted, but as the attorney points out, it's approval of the initial set and the second set of work plan priorities and the job description for the task force.
So an appropriate motion would be, I move that we approve attachment B to the interim city administrator contract consisting of the initial set of priorities, the first list of initial work plan, the second list of initial work plan items, and the job description for the Joint City Port Economic Development Task Force.
I'll second it. So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve, as our attorney just stated, because I don't want to try to restate it incorrectly, the approval of the contract in additions
The
B.
attachment B items.
Attachment B items. Now it's open to discussion. Lance?
Yeah, and I just want to clarify for the record, Mr. Cook, that you're approaching this as a work in progress that is somewhat fluid in the sense that not all the work plans are completely detailed at this point. We expect them to be at some point in the future, as well as you've mentioned that some priorities may be added to the list of priorities.
Absolutely, yes.
And I'm assuming then that some may be taken off if we were to ever go down that road as well.
Well, and that would be up to council.
Right. So what we're approving here isn't the same in terms of being set in stone as a contract. It's a work plan that is more fluid, that can be changed.
But it's still.
I would certainly hope so, and so does my intent to come to you at least monthly and give you a comprehensive status report on all of these issues that might include recommendations. This doesn't really warrant any further work, so let's change that. Clearly, you as council members may come up with additional priorities that you want me to work on, and I'm certainly open, because I do work for you, I'm open to accepting those and taking those on. I would require you, though, to go back to your initial set of priorities and say, if we're gonna do this one, where does it fit in the overall? And that, I think, is consistent with your job as policy and direction setters. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Kevin?
I would like to say that, this type of contract, to me, it's unique, but it seems really progressive as well. And one of the members of the audience had brought up before the water rights and how it had, quote, fallen through the cracks. And I think this type of policy prevents stuff that's important from falling through the cracks, because there is accountability and responsibility, but there's also the opportunity for the person that accomplishes these tasks to be able to receive the credit for accomplishing them too. So I think it's definitely a step forward for things getting accomplished as opposed to just talked about and then left to fall through the cracks.
Okay. No further discussion, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor and City Council, the next item is attachment C, and that is item 9C. It is the resolution prepared by the finance director that makes all of the adjustments and transfers necessary to deliver on the financial impact of the contract.
Does anyone from the public care to speak on resolution number 123, authorizing the transfer of funds from personal services to materials and services? Seeing none, we'll go on to council comments. At this time, is there any comments from the council?
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 1223.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Tiffany Pruitt and seconded by Don Haight to approve resolution 1223. Is there any questions or comments from the council? Kevin?
I just have one. It's informative. I just wish that this had a comparison to what we had been paying. Because I know that there's a significant savings in this agreement as proposed, or as compared to the one with the previous interim. And I believe it's $1,500 to $2,000 a month. So that would have been nice if this had, or at least the staff report had compared the two.
Lance?
Yeah, a question for Alexandra. Is it, since part of this transfer is going directly to a local landlord or business, is the personal services the appropriate fund for paying directly to a landlord?
I guess I don't look at this as any different than the city paying any other vendor contract. And, so the answer to your question is, I think the way that it's budgeted is fine, in accordance with Oregon budget and public contracting law.
Okay, any other further comment from the council? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving resolution 1223, say aye. Aye. All those opposed?
Opposed?
Motion passes.
Thank you, Council. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, the next item that I'm recommending you deal with is item 9B. And that's asking you to adopt a proposed format for the preparation of the agenda. As we discussed last week at the work plan meeting, I proposed this change, so I'm asking you to adopt attachment D, which is the proposed City Council meeting agenda. This does a couple of things that are important to point out. It moves your action items closer to the front of the agenda. The City Council meeting is the place where you make policy and direction. So I push that as far to the front of the meeting as I can. I know there's a desire on the part of city councils to meet until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and then do the business. But I thought, gee whiz, these are nice people, let's try to push that to the front. So you would go from call to order, pledge, roll call, additions or amendments to the agenda, adoption of the consent agenda, public hearings when needed, and go right to action. And I'm recommending that you collapse new business and old business. It's all action for you folks. It doesn't make any difference if it's new or old. Then we go to appearance of interested citizens. That would give the citizens an opportunity to participate in the discussion about each of the action items. And then if there's, after your action agenda is done and you've taken your actions, if there are other items they want to comment on, they could do that. Then we would go to reports and presentations. That's where I would give my report. If we have special presentations that you need to hear, those would be done at that time. And then if we have big issues, like some huge giant issue or policy, it would come to you under reports and presentations for introduction and discussion before we would push it onto an agenda for as an action item. So hopefully that work session presentation you would get and you would say, gee, we really like this, but we don't want this part of that policy. We'd rework it and eventually it would come to you for action. Then the mayor and council comments, any other matters, and then you go from there. So it is it's only a slight reworking of what your current policy is, but I think it'll work much better for you in terms of getting you focused on action and moving us forward.
Thanks, Paul. Anyone from the public care comment?
Good evening, Caitlin Stewart, Cascade Locks. I first didn't like this. I know how everyone watches and wants to come up and make the comments and go home. But I looked at it in a different view and came up with a couple of things. One is, we have a lot of citizens that work and get home and need to feed children or themselves before they can come down here and say anything. They've got businesses, they work out of town, they have a commute. It might help a few of them come in later in the show and be able to, participate more. The other thing is thinking over the last few meetings where it's been nothing but a diatribe against people, although it's not supposed to be personal, somehow it always turns out to be, doesn't it? And I think the council could probably face things a little better without the tongue lashing that they've been getting constantly at the beginning of a session. I'd rather see their minds and energy on what needs to be done in this town, not what they just got called, not what they just got told, not what just got waved in front of them, but seriously put their minds on what needs to be done. Action items, new business, old business, things that need your minds instead of at 9, 10 o'clock at night just tired and already worn out. I'd like to see you people actually handle it as alert, intelligent people. And so I'm very much for this, and I'd like to thank Mr. Cook for bringing it up.
Anyone else from the public care to speak?
Sandra Kelly, I agree wholeheartedly, and I think if a citizen wants to participate, they shouldn't just have their say and then march out, although I've done it myself, I'll have to admit. But I agree. The thing that I do question is if you have somebody here from another town or something to give a special presentation, I would have doubts that we should keep them waiting during the entirety of your meeting, and that maybe should be kept a more fluid item depending on where the people are from and how long you're going to allow them to speak as far as special presentations go. I hate to see somebody here from Hood River have, for instance, from Hood River Garbage, have to sit here, although he does as a matter of courtesy usually, but have to sit here for the entirety of the meeting, and he's not able to get back home until very late. So that is something I'd like to see you keep more fluid. And other than that, I'm in full agreement that this should be done. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could comment.
Go ahead.
One of the reasons I kept your additions and amendments to the agenda was so that you're able to accommodate exactly what Sandra's talking about. So if we have that person coming in, as much as I may want to keep them in town to spend money as long as we possibly can keep them here, that would allow us to say, well, let's get this person in and get them out of here so they can go home.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public care to speak? Seeing none, we'll go on to council comments. The council, Kevin.
There's one on the current agenda that's not on this, and that's the declaration discussion of potential conflicts of interest. Was that intending to not to have that on the agenda?
I
as
didn't
an
see
item?
any value for you having that on there. That's something that you could do at the beginning of the meeting. You could add it if you'd like to have it.
No, I was just asking.
Or you can do it at the beginning of the agenda item that you might have a conflict.
Most city councils don't have that listed as a separate business item.
Okay.
Any other comments? Lance?
Kathy, the current agenda, as I recall, is in the council rules, is that correct?
Yes.
And those were adopted by resolution.
Yes, so when this was just for you to discuss, and we had talked about that those were per resolution, and we would have to bring that back, so.
So we could change the council rules by a new resolution as a way of adoption.
Yes.
Is that the plan? Because the agenda item actually says adopt it tonight.
Well,
Yeah.
So I'm just curious about how, I mean, is it just to get approval to bring a resolution, or how is that?
Right, exactly right. We'll make this change, and then at the next meeting, you will see your council rules with a resolution to make those changes.
So would the change not happen for another 2 meetings
It's
then?
going to happen.
I mean, right, but, I mean, so people are planning, are we having the change at the next meeting?
Exactly, right,
Without the resolution being passed first?
right.
Any further comment? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Oh, Tom, go ahead.
Need a
No, go
motion.
ahead. I thought you were talking about
Oh, I'm sorry.
counselors come. I'm good.
You can still comment. I need to ask for motion. There hasn't been a motion yet, so.
Would be a motion to approve the revised council meeting agenda and direct the city administrator to bring a resolution back at the next meeting.
So moved.
Seconded.
It's been moved by Tiffany Pruitt and seconded by Don Hay to approve the format for the preparation of the agenda. All those in favor, discussion, Kevin?
Are we gonna have an action to suspend that particular part of the council rules so that this can be done? Or do we need to do that? I mean, it is,
What I see happening, and the attorney may disagree, and that's okay, is that your next agenda will come in the new format. You'll have a business item on there that would propose a resolution making this specific change in your council rules.
the only reason I bring it up is because this specific agenda is part of the council rules.
If you would like to be very stickler about it, and I apologize for not coming up with a nicer word, or not a stickler, we can always put that as the very first agenda item. So it could be call to order, pledge of allegiance, roll call, and then go from there to approving the resolution, modifying the agenda, and then voila, you can conduct the rest of your meeting under the revised agenda format.
The only reason I'm bringing it up is because the agenda is advertised, has to be advertised prior to the meeting, and it's gonna be prepared in a manner contrary to what, I know it's getting kinda technical, but
Sure.
I think it's,
couldn't we simply do that by?
I
by
think
motion
that's,
or
I think it's
consensus?
fine to do that. They're your own council rules, and the resolution is sort of more of a formality to be able to keep track of the changes that you make.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. And,
Thank you, council. Mayor and members of city council, the last item in this is the format for the preparation of staff reports. As we discussed at your priority setting session and distributed, I don't think, Kathy, I made any other changes in this. So what this attempts to do is to get you in a position so that you can clearly understand the issue, know what your options are, what we're recommending. There will be a legal implications section, and there will be a financial section. So when you looked at your staff report for the tourism those that hopefully are laid out, and I'm gonna try to keep your staff reports to no more than 2 pages. We may have thousands of attachments to it, but I wanna focus you on what the issue is, what your options are, what we think should be done, fiscal implications and the legal. And this format will do that. So what I'm asking for you to do is approve this as the policy for preparation of staff reports.
Anyone from the public care to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to council comments. Lance?
Mr. Cook, are you also planning to bring this back as a resolution so that it's an official policy, or are you just asking for the policy to be created as a motion?
I personally think you can do that as a motion.
So that's what you're asking for?
Right. But Councilman, I do think there are certain critical issues where a resolution is appropriate, but I think you can adopt policy by motion, by resolution, in any other way that you want. Am I correct, Chairman?
Yes.
Yes, Lance?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the proposed format for the preparation of staff reports.
Your second?
Second.
It's been moved by Lance Masters and seconded by Tom Cromwell to approve the changing of the staff reports, the preparation of staff reports. Is there any further comment? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
At this time, we will move on to councilor comments. Excuse me, I forgot.
Tourism.
I wrote it in there too.
We're also gonna vote on Kevin Dyson being another person on the committee.
Yeah, I can vote on that.
I think I just
Okay.
appointed him.
Okay.
Now we're going to tourism committees. You have a staff report on that?
I do. You have the staff report in front of you. It's item 9F.
You said that we're tabling something into my ear.
Looks like this. You can use mine if you'd like.
You got
I
it.
don't know.
I probably got mine too.
I had an email. But no attachment in the email.
There's no copy that you see.
It's okay.
I have one.
Do you have one copy?
Yeah, it's good. I would
Okay. There should have been one in each seat.
You need one? There's another one.
He's got one.
Oh.
All right. Mayor and members of City Council, you have received a request from the Tourism Committee seeking approval to spend $4,000 to bring a quartet to town. And this is a partnership with the Port of Cascade Locks. The port puts up $4,000 and you put up $4,000. Kathy is here in the audience just to answer any questions. I mean Donna, I'm sorry, Donna. Donna's here to answer any questions you may have. You have funds in the budget to pay for this. Your line item, account number 08405621115, has sufficient funds to cover this. That would, if you authorize this $4,000, you would then have $8,742 left. There is a contract that goes with this, and we would need to have an invoice to process the payment. In working with the attorney to get this moving along so that they can meet the schedule that they have to meet, in talking to the attorney, we're recommending that you approve the Tourism Committee's request to spend the $4,000, and that you authorize the mayor to sign the contract once the city attorney gets through and approves it. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Anyone from the public wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll go on to council discussion. Kevin?
The requirements for a contract review board I understand that the council acts as its own contract review board. Can we authorize the mayor to sign a contract before we've reviewed it?
Yes. What, the word review in there, in contract review board, doesn't mean you have to review every contract. What it means is that you have the authority under Oregon law to procure contracts. And it's really, you're really a contract procurement board.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the payment of $4,000 to the Skamania Performing Arts according to their contract.
And you can say, and authorize the mayor to sign
And
the
authorize
contract
the mayor to sign the contract
as approved by the city
as
attorney.
approved by the city.
Attorney.
Second.
It's been moved by Don Haight and seconded by Kevin Benson to approve the $4,000 to the Skamania Performing Arts, and to authorize the mayor to sign the contract after it's been approved by the city attorney. All those, is there any further questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, next we will go to mayor and councilor comments. Would any of the councilors care to comment? Don?
It was interesting listening to the comments from the audience tonight. There's a lot of comments about permits. They seem to forget our city not very long ago signed a contract for almost $500,000. And guess what? We're still working on that contract, and we still haven't got a permit for this big contract. Then we talked about $600 that wasn't budgeted for that same project. There was nothing budgeted for that project. That was a big project. Hood River didn't budget. And it's really funny, none of these things you see in the paper, but you'll see tomorrow, or whenever the Hood River paper comes out, they'll talk about what the comments were from the audience, but I bet they don't say a word about what I'm saying right now. That's all I've got to say.
Tom, did you have a question? Something to say?
Yeah, was down for the powwow and Festival of Nations. Been a little time, I had to work, but I did get there for the powwow evenings, and fairly good turnout down there, but the powwow is really great. These people come from all over the Northwest to come in here, and they put these competitions on, they're competing against each other, and the garb they come with, or they put on for this is pretty impressive. But I like the idea of the Festival of Nations, we'll continue to grow that. I like the art that they work with the kids and everything they got going on down there with it. Hopefully this can continue to grow, but it was I think it was a good weekend for them. I enjoyed it. Hopefully they seem to enjoy it, and they seem to want to continue to come and do it. So it was a really good event for us. Hopefully more people go down and enjoy it. And what you got to get involved in is the day stuff is really neat because they got the art and all that going on. But at night, under the lights down there, and when they start doing their dance competitions, it's pretty impressive. But I'd also like to thank the mayor for seeking out Administrator Cook. I think you did a great job there, and I like where we're heading. Things that are going on here, and looks like we're going to get some traction going in here, and get the council, get the city, get everything moving along here well again. So I appreciate what you did with that.
Kevin?
Give me a break.
Kevin, do you have anything?
No, that's fine.
No? Lance?
Sure. Well, first of all, I've expressed this to you privately, Mr. Cook, and I'd just like to say publicly, welcome to Cascade Locks. I'm glad you're here. The work you've done already is much appreciated, so thank you and welcome. The next item, I just want to make it clear, my intent is not to attack anyone. It has been brought up here that we do have advice from the county inspector as well as our own planner that we should revoke permits that have been issued. It's also been brought up that we don't have anyone to enforce our code, and we have advice that we should enforce our code. So at the very least, I believe that our city attorney should be looking into this matter and find out, what steps need to be taken. What does the city need to do? Is it true that we need to revoke our code? I'd ask that we have at least a consensus of council that we direct the attorney to do that.
Anything else?
Well, I'm asking you to ask for a consensus, that we have the attorney look into the advice of the county inspector as well as our own planner, that we revoke permits and enforce the code.
If I can jump in, you don't actually need to do that. Paul was going to bring that up just briefly in his staff presentation, that we're working on it.
Okay, well, I'll wait on that then.
Yeah, no, it's.
But I do think we should be
addressed.
taking action to look into, at least for appearances, if nothing else. Also, it was brought up that there's some sort of a lawsuit filed.
There's been
against
no
the city.
lawsuit filed. We've only received a notice of tort claim. So
A notice of tort claim, and could you just explain the difference between that and lawsuit?
a notice of tort claim is required under Oregon law to preserve a right to file a lawsuit, and it has to be done within 6 months of the events or action that give rise to the claim. And so a notice of tort claim has been filed to preserve the right to file a lawsuit if they choose to do that at some point in the future.
Okay. And is that, so that's not something that would, it's come to you, but not to the council? Is that correct?
Right. It's something that can always be put in your packet if you'd like. I take it and I immediately forward it to the insurance company so that they're on notice that we have the potential lawsuit that's out there. I've also sent an email to Kathy and Paul asking that this information be disseminated to the rest of staff, and that is putting a hold on public records destruction so that we retain all public records that might pertain to an eventual lawsuit, so that electronic devices are not cleaned or destroyed, and that we suspend destruction of records that would otherwise be authorized under the public records law.
How long has that preserved that right for?
Well, to a certain extent, I mean, if a lawsuit doesn't ever get filed, then at some point we just would have to make a call that, gee, it's been 3 years, we could take the hold off. What I would do would be to take a look at what the statute of limitations is for the various claims, and probably wait until the statute of limitations has run.
Tiffany, do you have anything you'd like to?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I really appreciate what Mr. Cook is doing here. It's nice to have the burden removed and be able to allow somebody else to be able to do the job. I also would like to say that several comments were made concerning permits tonight, and what wasn't mentioned was that there was also an email from Mr. Carson that stated that he did not have a problem with the KOA permit, and that Hood River County did not have a problem with it. That email has not been mentioned several times, and it's from a citizen that's sitting in the audience tonight. Also, there has not ever been a mention of the retraction that was made by the Hood River newspaper on some misinterpretations or misquotes about the same said incident. So the obvious side slanting on this one particular issue is palatable.
Dawn? Oh, that's, yeah, you've already spoken. All right. I'm last, so first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to talk briefly about water rights, just so that you're aware of, in the absence between Bernard leaving and then when Richard was here and then Paul being in here now. I had been involved when I was the acting city administrator. I had been involved with the city rights, the water rights for the city. I'd like to thank the port at this time because at one time the port had actually hired Tennyson Engineering on the city's behalf, free gratis, to go through and check out what our water rights are and what was going on with our water rights. Okay, at that time we had actually, I had been in contact with Dave Peleas from Nestle Water and talked to him about the situation as well. And we have actually, you have to file for an extension of time so that the information can be gathered, and the information is being gathered by Nestle Waters to secure our water rights, as well as I've been in contact with Dave Griffin, our new public works superintendent, and we went through what we had to do to secure our water rights. And everything is in the government situation now. Everything's in the chain. And so it's just as each spoke turns, it just takes time. But everything's appropriate. Everything is in place. Everything's being done at the time as we can do it. So we're just kind of in a waiting mode. But each step of the time, everything's being done. There's different things that Dave is doing currently. He's putting in new water meters at our freshwater pump station so that we can get accurate within 1% of how much water we actually use on a daily basis. And so when that gets done, it will help confirm our water rights, establish our water rights for the future, and so that's being done. So I just want everybody to know that that's been something that I've tried to work on very diligently and take care of in a timely manner so that this would not be an issue if the possibility comes up that we have the opportunity to have Nestle Water here. Okay, so I've made sure, at least from a legal standpoint and a technical standpoint, that those items have been being taken care of. So I just want you to know that. Next, I would like to take a moment to personally thank Tiffany Pruitt. She was up here basically being the city administrator. When I had my knee operation, I wasn't able to be here, which you all know about. And so I've been dealing with that, and I'm now going to try to be here as much as I can. But in hiring Paul, he has taken a huge burden off of myself and especially Tiffany in the last month, because people don't realize there's, just signing checks. You might have to come in one day or the next day and sign checks, read letters, open mail, go through invoices. There's several things that you have to do when you're the city administrator. And so, in the fact that we didn't have a city administrator, Tiffany was taking care of a lot of those items because I wasn't able to because of my physical condition with my knee. So I wanted to thank that, and then I also wanted to thank the staff, because I know it's been a difficult time for them in this transition, but hopefully now with Paul and everything else, everything starts to work on a very professional and flowing manner. So that's all I want to say. Thank you for coming. So with that, that'll be the end of mayor comments and councilor comments. Staff notes, do you have anything, Paul?
I do, Mayor. Mayor, members of council, code enforcement was one of the original 30 issues that you all raised up there. It will be dealt with fairly quickly, because as I'm going through that list in the priority order, so sooner or later you're going to see a recommendation on what we do with code enforcement, and I'll be working with the attorney on that. Secondly, on the number one priority that you established, comprehensive report dealing with the fire department issue and the direction that you gave me last week to work on that issue. So all of the elements and all the pieces that everybody has talked about will be dealt with within the confines of that document. You have copies of it, the county fire departments have copies of it, and we're hoping to meet with them this week and close all of the details regarding those relationships so that I can get that report back to you. On the land use issue and the permit issue, we had just begun looking into that, so I can give you all a comprehensive report from a staff perspective as to what happened, what was done, was it legal, was it not, and I'll be meeting with the county and finishing that report also. That's all I have. Any questions?
Did you have a staff report or anything, Cal?
No, sir.
Okay. With that, that's the end of staff notes. There is no televised work session. There is no executive session. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Adjourn.
Thank you,
For coming.
Feed the bear.